Some game times for the 2024 college football season are slowly but surely starting to find their way to the public, and there's a couple of these games that raised some eyebrows in terms of the times they got. We're just going to unpack this from the filter of we are college football fans. Like, we are blessed, fortunate, grateful to do this job where we sit behind a microphone and don't cover one specific team. So we're viewing this just as a fan of the sport. And the game that got, I guess, the most pushback, if you will, when it comes to the time they're playing at, Alabama at Wisconsin, week 3, big noon. Like, I don't understand why we're pushing back on this. You get Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt on the call. I mean, you're going to get some kind of iconic, and there goes Milroe. Like, that's my Gus Johnson impersonation. I understand that's not going to be anywhere near what it sounds like, but having Gus Johnson calling SEC football, that's going to be a lot of fun. Full transparency, I also feel like when you have a Big Ten game played at noon, it just kind of feels right to me. Ohio State, Michigan, that game's at noon. Typically, whenever Big Noon has a Big Ten game, whether it be Michigan, Penn State last year, it's usually a pretty high stakes, high impact kind of game. Like, that is the big stage for that conference. I love it. It'll be in Madison. It'll be electric. And if you're a fan, I mean, this helps shape up your week 3 college football Saturday like perfectly, because you'll have this one to start the day, start it with a bang. And then hopefully we'll see where these times end up falling. But you got Texas A&M at Florida, Georgia at Kentucky, LSU at South Carolina. I'm imagining one or two of those will be later in the day, if not all 3. And then for my sickos, if you watch this show, you're probably a sicko. So if you're watching this show, we got Oregon at Oregon State at some point during this day. That's going to be a lot of fun, so we'll lock in for that one. Bottom line, week 3 is going to be great. Having Bama at Wisconsin at noon, first world problems, we love to see it. Clemson and Georgia is at noon in Atlanta, and this also got some pushback, which anytime you see a week 1 game being played in Atlanta, it's usually not a night game from what I've come to expect from those kind of games. I don't get the outrage around this one. And let's just have a very transparent, very candid conversation. Can we be honest about this game? I don't think it's going to be close. We're going to predict it when it gets here. We're going to break it down. We're going to give you our official pick then, so we reserve every right to change it. But I don't think it's going to be a close game. Here's the other thing, too. Vegas doesn't either. They got Georgia favored by 13.5 points. So if you're going to have a big brand matchup with Georgia and Clemson, and it could be a good game. I don't think it will be close, but if it is a good game, you'll be able to watch that during the noon window, kind of get your day started with a bang, much like Alabama at Wisconsin. But if it's not an exciting game, great. You got a bunch of other games throughout the day to look forward to. And your day didn't build up to a night game in Atlanta where Georgia ran Clemson out of the building by 3 touchdowns. So I think also it's worth noting that this game is at a neutral site, which we've already established, but I appreciate the fact that during week 1, we got a lot of bangers in week 1, and we're preserving the electricity of a week 1 night game for an on-campus game, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. So no shade against Clemson. We're just kind of calling it as we see it right now. I think Georgia's going to roll in that game. It's a nooner. It'll be fun. Let's roll. Now, the night game for week 1, Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Listen, I love College Game Day. I've said that many times on this show. I grew up watching that thing. A lot of my good friends growing up, they would watch Saturday morning cartoons. I watched Saturday morning with Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard and Lee Corso. That was my Saturday morning. So we got Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Game day going to College Station, coming to your city, 7:30 Eastern kick. The fact that we get this game at night in Kyle Field, this just feels like a big-time matchup. The storylines in itself are epic. We're going to match the way that this game feels with the stage that we're putting it on. That's a good thing for college football. The storylines in themselves are epic. I mean, you got Mike Elko and Riley Leonard, both previously at Duke. Now they meet for their first time with their new schools on opposing sidelines. National attention on this one. Notre Dame feels like they're about to take that next step and be a college football playoff team and make a run to the playoff. A&M feels like, all right, it's about time we hit the reset button on this thing. Now we can really accomplish all that we want to accomplish. Both these teams expect to do big things this year. This game is going to be the kickoff for that. Not just in a literal sense because it's week 1, but I mean it is going to be the tone setter for both sides of this thing. So I love that it's a night game. Kyle Field will have the electricity it deserves in that stadium. It's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait. Let's lock in for that one. Tremendous work by the Suits for once, getting us a night game with Notre Dame and A&M. Now, before we get Notre Dame and A&M, and after we get Clemson, Georgia, week 1 just got a banger in every single time slot. We get Miami going to the Swamp, 3:30 Eastern kick. Everything about this game is going to just be high intensity from the fan bases who have already been high intensity on Twitter. So shout to y'all from the Florida Gator and Miami Hurricane social media sides of this fan base. The feeling around both coaching staffs. I had someone tell me they feel like this game will be Cristobal and Billy Napier racing for pinks. I don't know if that's going to be the case in this game, but there might be some kind of emotion behind that. It's a rivalry game. Also, kind of similar to what I said about the Big Ten having games at noon that are high impact and kind of the big stage for them. There's something about a big-time Week 1 game being played with some daylight. Maybe that's just me, but a lot of my memories from actually playing college football, playing high school football, and also watching a lot of big-time games early in the season, the sun is still out for some of those later games, so that first half, typically you get some sunshine. We'll get that for this game if that suits what you're what you're looking for. The bottom line here is, though, Miami and Florida, you could schedule this thing at 6 o'clock in the freaking morning, and guess what? This thing would still be packed out. Miami would still travel well for this one. The Swamp would still be on fire, so put it at whatever time you want. It'll be electric, but I like that we get it in between the Clemson and Georgia game and the Notre Dame A&M game for week 1. That'll be a lot of fun. Again, hat tip to the Suits. We're not going to do that a lot for y'all, but we'll give you a hat tip this time around on this show. Last game we want to talk about here, Colorado at Nebraska, 7:30 Eastern. I believe it's on NBC. This is just pumping extra caffeine into a rivalry that needs some more life and has had life previously. Like, people that don't really follow college football or don't have a tremendous historic gauge for college football, Colorado and Nebraska in the 80s and 90s, like, this used to be a rivalry, like a nationally relevant rivalry. And now you got Coach Prime in prime time, and you got Matt Rule in a sold-out imagining Lincoln, Nebraska, that will be on fire. And both of these teams going into this game view this game as a win. Like, both these fan bases, when you saw the schedule and you started doing the exercise that we do a little bit later in the summer, where you go down and you say, okay, win, loss, win, loss, win, 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 loss. Okay, we'll have a record of blank. When you get to the Colorado-Nebraska game, if you're a Colorado fan or you're a Nebraska fan, both fan bases are saying Colorado win, Nebraska win. Like, they both think they're getting a dub here. So the intensity will be at an all-time high. Nebraska is in payback mode from last year's game in Boulder. That kind of kept the hype train that was Deion Sanders and Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, continuing to roll into that game day game. In Colorado, man, it's no secret. They thrive on the big stage. They love the lights, camera, action, and more power to them. They're going to have their chance here in this game. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's one, if we could just pick a game to go to. It's a night game, so it'll be tough for us to get there and then get back for our Sunday morning sprint. But if we could pick one game to get to, man, Colorado and Nebraska is be a tough one to pass up. So, game times starting to trickle out. Texas and Michigan is also a big noon game in week 2. I don't really think that's too much of a surprise by nature of that being a bargaining chip for Texas and OU getting into the SEC early. But nonetheless, got some game times trickling out. No notes at this point, but a lot of excitement. I'll say this before we move on here. This is a sign now, with College Game Day saying they're going to A&M, some game time starting to come our way. This is a sign now that college football is not nearly as far off as it feels. I understand it's been a walk through the desert of sorts. We've had some oases to drink from, which has been the transfer portal, which has been recruiting, which has been different talking points, different sound bites from folks like Brian Kelly. But we're close. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Hang in there. We'll be right there with you. We'll lock arms. We'll get through this thing together. But I promise you, we are not nearly as far off as it feels. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.